Don't pick me up, that's a start. Always popping, yeah. My body hurts, can't stand. Breathe.
If you try to picture mammoths, chances are that you're picturing a prehistoric time period, possibly with some dinosaurs in the backdrop. We think of mammoths as long extinct. Even if we know that they came in contact with early humans, those humans are always imagined as early hunter-gatherers fighting with primitive weapons. In reality, mammoths were around for much longer than you'd think and may even have crossed paths with some of our early great civilizations. While it's true that these creatures used to roam the entirety of the Earth some 10,000 years ago, they were eventually restricted to a small region in Siberia and the Arctic. The last mammoth died sometime around 1650 BC on Wrangel Island, a tiny island in the Arctic. For perspective, that was approximately 1,000 years after the construction of the pyramids of Giza and only 100 years before the establishment of the best-known phase of the ancient Egyptian Empire. The ocean is a big, bad place. Most of us realize that the underwater creatures we know about are only the tip of the iceberg. True horror starts when you really explore the depths, as we don't even know the full extent of diversity in the deep sea. From gigantic squids to eels, right from your worst nightmares, it's an ancient part of the ocean that no one honestly wants to fully investigate. No matter how old those animals are, though, they still don't compare to the most popular creature in the seas, sharks. You don't have to venture too deep to find them, either. Just hang out in the shady parts of the sea, and they'll come to you. Sharks are essentially living fossils and have been virtually unchanged for a long time. And by long, we do mean long. Sharks predate most life on Earth, including trees. Yup, sharks, around 400 million years old, have been the same since before plants figured out that growing tall is the best course of action some 350 million years ago. Some variation of this myth going around in a lot of cultures around the world. If a body part is cut off due to an accident, you can just put it back and the body will accept it like nothing ever happened. Some people believe it works on fingers, and some say toes. According to science, though, it's ridiculous to think that you can just reattach any part of the body, at least without medical help. With one exception: teeth. If you ever find yourself on the playground and happen to knock out a tooth, you can just put it back as long as it's perfectly placed. The socket will form roots on its own, and eventually, it will be like it was before the injury. Dentists do the same thing if you take a tooth to them. They just put it in place with some sort of binders, after which you can just go home and let it do its thing. Now there are some conditions to it. The tooth shouldn't be chipped in other places, as that would take further dental procedures to fix. It also has to be kept moist when it's knocked out. Letting it dry out will damage the nerves and reduce its chances of reattachment. When you think of the largest militaries in the world, you envision countries like the United States, China, Russia, and India. Although that's largely correct, some private contractors and mercenaries are quite up there on the list, too. Some of them, like G4S, have more personnel than the militaries of countries like Britain and France. However, one private force in recent times trumps them all. Pepsi. In 1989, Pepsi found itself in possession of 17 Russian submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer. Due to the Russians' newfound love for the beverage, the company exchanged $3 billion worth of Pepsi for a big chunk of one of the largest fleets in the world. It made Pepsi the sixth largest force in the world. Thankfully for us all, that didn't tempt him to join the burgeoning and profitable private military industry. Pepsi eventually sold it all for scrap to a Swedish company. Said that if you don't use your brain for a long time, it may catch rust. Of course, this refers to metaphorical rust, indicating that consistent mental practice is essential to keeping our cognitive abilities sharp. As some scientists recently found out, however, it isn't as metaphorical as we thought. The brain can rust the same way as an old iron nail. In a study done to better understand the escalating effects of Alzheimer's, scientists from Australia found that excess accumulation of iron in the brain affects it in the same way as rust. While there's no doubt that iron is essential for the body in many ways, high levels of iron in the brain can cause a reaction with oxygen and damage the neurons, much like how rusting works in the outside world. According to the researchers, this doesn't mean that you should cut down on iron or that eating a lot of iron increases the risk of Alzheimer's. Iron in the rest of the body doesn't work the same way as it does in the brain.